They called him the man who could buy anything. Alexander Davenport, a self-made millionaire whose lavish galas and luxury cars captured every hungry eye. But behind the golden facade of his fairy tale marriage was a secret that threatened to bring his empire crashing down. It happened on a sweltering summer afternoon at his wife's elaborate baby shower when Rosalind Davenport raised the ultrasound photo in front of a crowd of curious guests. In that silent second, all eyes turned to the trembling mistress, Felicity Monroe, whose face reflected nothing but unrestrained terror. The illusions of wealth and power were about to shatter, revealing a drama no money could contain. Alexander Davenport often told people that he had pulled himself up by his own bootstraps. Born to middle-class parents in the quiet suburban town of Glendale, he had honed his ambition from an early age. As a teen, he mowed lawns and tutored younger kids just to earn a few extra dollars. By 21, he'd made his first successful stock investment. By 25, he was directing a new technology startup in the heart of San Francisco, and by 30, he had secured his place among the city's young elite, with a net worth creeping toward 8 figures. He married Rosalind Turner, a sweet socialite from an old-money Boston family, when he was 28. Their wedding was heralded as the event of the year, a romantic ceremony at a vineyard in Tuscany, complete with a string quartet, fireworks, and a guest list that featured everyone from state senators to minor European nobility. Newspapers from all over the country covered it, painting them as the perfect couple. People lauded their charity work, fawned over their romance, and insisted they were destined for greatness. Yet beneath that shimmering veneer lay a hidden dimension to Alexander. His unrelenting ambition and hunger for success sometimes manifested as a restlessness, a need for validation that even his loving wife, dazzling home, and social status couldn't quell. Over time, that restlessness grew, morphing into a taste for danger. Alexander thrived on challenge, on the high of courting risk. In the hush of corporate boardrooms and over champagne at exclusive gatherings, his eyes began to wander. He was discreet, never one to court open scandal, but there was an undeniable spark whenever he found himself in the company of alluring women beyond the confines of his marriage. His wife's occasional knowledge of these rumors was an unspoken thorn in her side. Rosalind, outwardly poised, often inwardly battled her suspicions and insecurities, but those storms in her heart were overshadowed when her long-held dream finally came true. She became pregnant. After a few heartbreaks, failed attempts at in vitro fertilization, she had finally conceived. Alexander was overjoyed, or so it seemed. He doted on her, bringing her favorite bouquets of peonies and lavender, scheduling the best prenatal care, and slowing his hectic schedule just enough to accompany her to medical appointments. Still in the background, the phone calls and hushed texts from a certain number continued. The name on his phone read Felicity Monroe, a slender brunette who possessed a sharp mind, a wicked sense of humor, and a fierce determination that mirrored his own. She was not just a young woman enthralled by a wealthy older man. She was an intelligent marketing director who had climbed the corporate ladder rapidly through cunning and charm. Despite Alexander's attempts to keep the affair quiet, he found himself increasingly ensnared by Felicity's energy. When he was with her, it felt like he was stepping out of his gilded cage. She did not ask him about quiet domestic evenings or baby furniture. She spoke of exotic travel and new business ventures. She was both his confidant and an escape, her presence electrifying. And it was an addiction he couldn't seem to shake, even as Rosalind's belly grew and baby names became the topic of daily conversation. The day that would change everything began innocently enough. Sunlight streamed into the master suite of the Davenports' sprawling estate in Atherton, painting golden patches on the marble floors. Rosalind sat by the vanity, humming a lullaby as she touched her stomach. She was 30 weeks pregnant, and this ultrasound session was crucial. It would determine the baby's health growth and possibly reveal details of any complications. Alexander had come in late the previous night, discreetly slipping into bed, claiming he'd been busy closing a major deal with overseas partners. Rosalind had believed him mostly because she wanted to believe him. But there had been an edge to her voice, a faint trembling, as though she'd begun to realize that some intangible wedge had come between them. They arrived at the private clinic in separate cars, Alexander explained. He'd had a meeting earlier, and Dr. Marjorie Caldwell greeted them warmly. A pioneer in prenatal care among the wealthy elite, Dr. Caldwell often dealt with high-profile clients. She prided herself on her professionalism and skill. Rosalind lay on the padded examination table, letting out a sigh of relief when the ultrasound's images appeared on the monitor. The gentle whoosh of the baby's heartbeat calmed her. Alexander stood by her side, his hand over hers, seemingly enraptured by the black-and-white flicker that was their child. "It's a strong heartbeat," Dr. Caldwell remarked with a smile, pointing at the monitor. "And the growth is exactly where we want it." Rosalind's eyes gleamed, and for a moment she felt that old love returning to Alexander's gaze, that unspoken dream of a happy family. The doctor printed out the ultrasound pictures and placed them in Rosalind's hand. But as they walked out of the clinic, Rosalind's phone buzzed. It was a message from her friend, Victoria Chen. "Your baby shower is all set. Don't be late. We have a big surprise." Little did Rosalind know, the biggest surprise was not from her friend. Alexander, preoccupied with a quick phone call, parted ways with Rosalind, promising to meet her at the estate in a couple of hours. As he walked away, she spotted the contact name Felicity Monroe lighting up on his phone. That set a tiny flicker of doubt in the back of her mind. The baby shower was an extravagant affair, as one might expect from the Davenports' circle. Their Atherton mansion, sprawling across 3 acres, boasted manicured lawns and fountain sculptures. Under pink and blue drapes that swayed in the breeze, guests sipped champagne or sparkling cider for the pregnant women and savored miniature French pastries. A few celebrity acquaintances like Margot Jennings, the fashion designer, and Bruce Helmsley, the owner of a major sports team, graced the party with their presence. Soft classical music filled the air, complemented by the gentle clinking of glasses. Everywhere she turned, Rosalind could hear guests giggling, congratulating her, praising the wonder of impending motherhood. Rosalind was basking in compliments from an elderly duchess, an old friend of her mother's, when she caught sight of her husband stepping off the veranda. A breath later, she saw Felicity Monroe by the grand gate, receiving a greeting from the security guards. Her heart hammered. What was Felicity doing here? No one else seemed to recognize her or sense that anything was amiss. Felicity Monroe was, after all, an astute networker in the corporate world. Perhaps Alexander had extended a purely professional invitation. Or maybe Felicity had come on some other pretense. Yet the way Alexander's eyes flickered, the anxious energy that suddenly surrounded him like a cloak, betrayed everything. Rosalind tried to remain polite, exchanging small talk with the guests, but she could hardly keep her eyes off Felicity. The younger woman navigated the crowd, expertly making conversation here and there, never staying in one place too long. For a moment, Rosalind thought that maybe her suspicions were paranoia, until Felicity glanced back at Alexander with a look that spoke volumes, an intimate, unguarded look. In that fleeting second, Rosalind felt a pulse of betrayal stronger than any she had felt before. As the afternoon progressed, Victoria Chen and a few other friends gathered everyone around the lawn for the big reveal of the baby's gender, an idea that Victoria had orchestrated. But Rosalind had decided earlier that she wanted it to be more than a simple gender reveal. She wanted to share the latest ultrasound image with the people closest to her. Dr. Caldwell had given her a small video clip of the baby's heartbeat, which she had turned into a short film with gentle background music. She stood at the front of the crowd, wearing a flowing pastel blue dress that highlighted her glowing skin and rounded belly. Her hair was swept up in a loose chignon, a gold necklace glinting at her collarbone. Alexander hovered beside her, one arm resting lightly on her shoulder. Someone dimmed the lights in the marquee tent, and the short film played on a widescreen TV. The baby's heartbeat resounded over the speakers, that miraculous whoosh echoing in the hushed space. Soft oohs and ahs rose from the guests. Rosalind felt tears burning in her eyes, momentarily forgetting her unease about Felicity. Then came the ultrasound snapshots, the baby's hands, feet, and finally the outline of a tiny face. Rosalind smiled gently, clasping Alexander's hand. At that moment, even he seemed lost in the wonder of it. But once the screen went black and the lights came back on, something shifted in the air. The hush turned unnerving. And there, standing at the very edge of the crowd, was Felicity. Her normally confident posture was replaced by stiff shoulders and a trembling lower lip, her gaze fixed on the ultrasound photo that Rosalind held high. Rosalind noticed the look of apprehension and fear creeping into Felicity's expression. And then, in a slow, surreal wave, the gathered crowd turned to see what Rosalind was seeing, a mistress trembling in the presence of a pregnant wife. Felicity's eyes darted from Rosalind to Alexander, then back again, as if searching for an escape. At that moment, the entire facade came crashing down. Rosalind's mother, Beatrice Turner, was the first to sense something cataclysmic was unfolding. She let out a bewildered gasp, her hand flying to her mouth. A couple of the guests exchanged puzzled looks. Others shifted uncomfortably, aware that a drama bigger than any conventional baby shower game was unfolding before them. Alexander felt sweat beading on his forehead. He tried to maintain his composure, but panic gleamed in his eyes. He nearly stepped forward to usher Felicity away, to salvage the moment somehow, but it was too late. Rosalind gently laid down the ultrasound photo on a side table. The tension in the tent was so thick that it felt like the hush of a funeral parlor. Slowly, deliberately, she turned to Alexander and Felicity. "Alexander," she began, her voice quivering. "Why is Miss Monroe here?" He struggled to answer, his mind flipping through possible lies, excuses, rationalizations. She's here on a professional matter. Felicity cut in, her voice shaky, but with an attempt at her old confidence. "I'm from his marketing division. He's been consulting me on new expansions. I just wanted to drop by to congratulate you both." Rosalind wasn't buying it. She glanced at Felicity, picking up on every flicker of guilt and fear. "Really? Then why do you look as though you've seen a ghost?" The tension snapped like a dry twig. Several guests backed away quietly, giving space to what was becoming a very public confrontation. Some turned their faces away out of sheer awkwardness or embarrassment. Others looked on, riveted, as though witnessing a real-life soap opera. Rosalind couldn't hold back the tears stinging her eyes. She'd spent weeks, months, ignoring a gnawing suspicion. She had hoped that her husband's occasional distance was due to work stress, not infidelity. Confronted now with what felt like undeniable evidence, her heart hammered against her rib cage. "Answer me," she whispered through clenched teeth. Alexander tried to salvage the scene. "Rosalind, please, let's talk inside. There's no need to involve everyone here." But Rosalind, driven by heartbreak and anger, refused to be moved. "No, if there's truth to be told, let everyone hear it." And so, in the hush of the marquee tent, Alexander found himself forced to admit what he'd hoped to keep hidden. "I made a mistake," he whispered, staring at the ground. "I hired Felicity to help with a new venture. We got close. Too close." The murmurs from the crowd were immediate and scandalized. Felicity's face turned ashen, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. Just then, Rosalind's father, Nigel Turner, stepped forward. "My daughter is 8 months pregnant, and you decide to do this to her?" he demanded, voice trembling with rage. Alexander, choking on shame, whispered, "I'm sorry." For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound was the gentle whir of the tent's ceiling fans. Then Rosalind's best friend, Victoria, hurried to the trembling mother-to-be, wrapping an arm around her for support. Rosalind took a shaky breath. "You're sorry," she repeated, turning to Felicity. "And you did? You think you could just walk in here, pretend you're just another guest, while I carry this man's child?" Felicity opened her mouth, but no words came out. She blinked away tears. I didn't mean... I just wanted..." A wave of fury seized Rosalind. She picked up the ultrasound photos and held them out toward Felicity. "This is my baby, my son or daughter. And you," she looked to Alexander, "you've betrayed both of us." The baby shower ended as abruptly as it had begun. Guests filed out, murmuring apologies and well-wishes to Rosalind. A few of the closer friends stayed behind to support her, offering comforting words, but the tension was still palpable in every corner of the Davenport mansion. Felicity slipped away the moment the confrontation died down. She was gone before Rosalind could demand any further explanations. Alexander was left to face his wife's family, who voiced their outrage openly. Beatrice Turner was furious. "Have you no respect for this family?" she snapped at Alexander. "My daughter is carrying the next generation of our family line, and you gallivant around with that." Woman Alexander's own parents were conspicuously absent. He had grown distant from them after he became wealthy, preferring to navigate the corporate world without them. Still, in that moment, he longed for some paternal reassurance. He stood on the veranda, head lowered as Rosalind sobbed inside. Most of the staff kept their distance, giving the family space to handle the scandal. He realized that as humiliating as this day was, the worst was yet to come. A potential divorce, custody battles for the unborn child, and his entire fortune and name dragged through the tabloids. Finally, he mustered the courage to enter the living room. Rosalind was seated on a velvet sofa, her father and mother on either side. Her eyes were swollen from crying, cheeks blotchy. Yet she sat upright, shoulders set as if summoning a regal strength. She turned to him. "You have one chance to explain yourself," she said in a clipped tone. Alexander swallowed, feeling the dryness in his throat. "Rosalind, I'm sorry. I let my ambition and my weaknesses get the better of me. Felicity, it was a mistake." "A mistake," Nigel Turner spat. "Adultery is more than a mistake. It's a betrayal." Alexander forced himself to remain composed. "I won't deny that I was unfaithful, but it ended weeks ago. I tried to break it off for good. I regret it more than I can say." Rosalind locked eyes with him. "Is that why she showed up today? Because it's over." Alexander sighed. "I didn't invite her. Maybe she wanted to see if I'd changed my mind. I don't know. But please understand, Rosalind, I never meant to hurt you. I just..." He trailed off, feeling foolish. You just what? She clenched her fists, her voice trembling with rage. He stared at the floor. I just wanted something different. Excitement. I realize now how insane that sounds, but that was the mindset I was in. Rosalind let out a shaky exhale, her eyes glistening. Did you think of our baby even once? His expression sank into remorse. I did. That's why I ended it. I wanted to focus on our family. Beatrice scowled. Well, you've done a miserable job of it. My daughter's health is precarious. Do you realize how stress impacts her? Alexander took a step closer, his voice soft. I know it's no excuse, but I love you, Rosalind. I want our family to work. She stared at him with a mixture of heartbreak and disgust. Love, you have a funny way of showing it. A week passed in a tense limbo. Rosalind avoided Alexander, staying in her old bedroom in her parents' townhouse in San Francisco. Alexander, meanwhile, was left to manage the mansion alone, staff wandering on eggshells around him. But the scandal was unstoppable. Whispers in their social circle, talk around the corporate offices, everyone knew the Davenports' marriage was on the rocks. The tabloids got wind of a rumor tech tycoon's affair exposed at wife's baby shower. Soon, paparazzi hovered outside their home, snapping pictures. Alexander was in the middle of a crisis meeting with his public relations team when he received an unexpected call from Felicity Monroe. Despite himself, he answered. Alexander, her voice trembled. I'm sorry for what happened. I never wanted to ruin you. He rubbed his temples. You made a scene at my wife's baby shower, he snapped. What did you think was going to happen? I just wanted to see if there was still any chance for us, she said quietly. He sighed, trying to keep his composure. It's over, Felicity. It has been for a while. You being there only made things worse. My entire life is coming undone because of a mistake we both made. There was a pause, and he could hear her sharp intake of breath. Alexander, I'm pregnant. His heart skipped a beat, shock coursing through his veins. What do you mean? Pregnant, I found out last week. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how. That's why I showed up at the shower to see if you'd changed your mind about us. Stunned silence. Then, in a quiet, urgent voice, Alexander asked, Are you sure it's mine? She let out a shaky breath, offended by the question. I'm sure. There's no one else. Alexander squeezed his eyes shut, feeling the weight of the revelation crush him. 2 pregnancies, 2 unborn children, his entire world spiraling out of control. I need time, he finally whispered. I need to think. She started to cry softly on the other end of the line. What are we going to do? He couldn't give an answer. He ended the call, his mind teeming with anxiety and dread. Felicity's revelation turned everything upside down. Alexander debated telling Rosalind immediately, but he feared the news might put her health at grave risk. She was nearing her 8th month. Any severe stress could trigger complications. Yet he knew that hiding it wouldn't help. Meanwhile, Felicity faced her own dilemmas. She felt trapped. Her ambition had led her to seduce a powerful man, but she had genuinely developed feelings for him. Now, she was carrying his child, uncertain whether she had a future with him or any future in her career. If the scandal spread, she might become a pariah in the elite corporate world. She consulted a lawyer, Harriet Brandt, a well-known figure in handling hush-money settlements for high-profile clients. Harriet was a no-nonsense professional who had dealt with many clandestine affairs. She advised Felicity to consider her options: a private arrangement, going public, or even a lawsuit. Felicity felt torn. She didn't want to destroy Alexander. Part of her still loved him, or at least the idea of him, but she also had to protect herself and the child she carried. Word reached Alexander that Felicity had spoken to Harriet Brandt. The implication was clear. If he didn't provide some security or compromise, Felicity might take drastic action. Desperate Alexander reached out to Felicity, arranging a meeting at a secluded restaurant outside the city. Late in the evening, they sat in a dimly lit booth, tension twisting between them like a coil. "Please, Felicity," he began softly, "I'll make sure you and the baby are taken care of, but I need time to straighten things out with Rosalind. I want to be honest with her, but not until our baby is born. Her health is fragile." Felicity ran her thumb across the rim of her water glass. "And what if Rosalind never forgives you? Are you going to run off with me?" Alexander swallowed. "You know that's not realistic. I don't want to abandon my marriage. I've made a grave mistake, but I still love Rosalind. I love my unborn child, both children." His words cut Felicity like a knife. She blinked away tears. "You say that, but what about me? I'm not just some walking scandal. I have my own life, my own dreams." He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I promise I won't leave you stranded. Whatever happens, you will have financial support, and I'll be there for our baby if you let me. I just can't give you what I gave Rosalind because she's my wife." Felicity sniffled. "That's exactly it. I'll always be second, always hidden." Alexander exhaled heavily. "I'm sorry, but that's the only way I can see. If you go public, it will ruin us both. You'll lose your career, your reputation. You know what the tabloids do to women in your position." Silence hovered for a few moments. Eventually, Felicity nodded, albeit reluctantly. "All right. For now, I'll keep this quiet. But if you betray me again, I won't stay silent." Rosalind tried to distract herself from her marital woes by focusing on her pregnancy. She spent time with her mother, visiting baby boutiques, preparing the nursery, choosing everything from paint colors to crib designs. On the surface, she seemed composed, but inside she was in turmoil. Rumors swirled around her social circle. Some claimed she was divorcing Alexander immediately. Others insisted she was forgiving him. The truth was, she hadn't decided. She was torn between love, betrayal, heartbreak, and fear for her baby's future. One afternoon, Victoria Chen appeared at Rosalind's door with a concerned expression. "Ros, you need to see this," she said gravely, handing her a gossip magazine. On the front page was a blurred photograph of Felicity and Alexander in what appeared to be a cozy conversation. The headline read, "Tycoon's secret, meetings continue." Rosalind's stomach churned. "He told me he ended it," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "Maybe it's just old photos," Victoria tried to console her. But Rosalind recognized the date on the corner of the restaurant receipt that some paparazzo had managed to snap a photo of. It was only a few days prior. Furious, she went straight to her phone and called Alexander. He answered on the second ring, his voice tense. "Rosalind." She drew a shaky breath. "I saw the tabloids. Is it true?" He hesitated. "Let me explain." She cut him off. "No, I don't want an explanation over the phone. Meet me at our house tomorrow morning. I want the truth." The next morning, Alexander arrived at the Atherton mansion to find Rosalind pacing in the grand foyer. She looked striking. In a simple white maternity dress, her gaze filled with anger and sadness. He approached cautiously, aware that Beatrice and Nigel Turner were in the drawing room, likely ready to step in if he upset their daughter. Rosalind fixed him with a steely glare. "Talk." Alexander took a deep breath, then guided her into the library for a semblance of privacy. Floor-to-ceiling mahogany bookshelves and plush armchairs gave the room a stately aura, but the tension overshadowed any sense of comfort. "I met Felicity," he began, "but not for the reasons you think." "Really?" Rosalind scoffed. Enlighten me. Alexander braced himself. She's pregnant, he said finally. Rosalind felt the blood drain from her face. She clutched the back of a chair to steady herself. You got her pregnant? He couldn't meet her eyes. Yes. Her trembling grew. She lowered herself slowly into the armchair, staring at him as though he were a stranger. That's why she looked so terrified at my baby shower. Alexander nodded, shame burning in his cheeks. She discovered it right before then. I didn't know, Rosalind, I swear I didn't. She just showed up that day to see if she had any future with me. Rosalind's breaths came fast. Oh my God. I don't know what to say. He knelt next to her chair, gently placing a hand on her knee. I'm sorry. I never intended for this to happen. I've told her I'll take responsibility, but it doesn't change what I've done. It's a betrayal, and I have no excuse. She pulled away, staring at him with a mix of fury and heartbreak. So now you have 2 children on the way. He nodded, unable to speak. Tears ran down her cheeks. I can't believe this. It's like a nightmare. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? How painful? Alexander lowered his head. I know. If I could go back in time, I would. She gave a bitter laugh. What do you want from me? Forgiveness, compassion. He closed his eyes, voice raw. I just want you to know that I love you. I love our baby. I want to make this right, to do whatever I can. But I also can't abandon my responsibility to Felicity's child. Rosalind let out a ragged breath, her anger momentarily overshadowed by confusion. I need space. I need time. He nodded, rising to leave. I understand. I'll give you all the time you need. He turned to go, but paused at the door. Just remember, my priority is you and our baby. She looked away, tears slipping down her cheeks. Over the following weeks, as Rosalind entered her final month of pregnancy, the stress weighed heavily on everyone. Alexander faced a double crisis, salvaging his business reputation and bridging an ever-widening rift with his wife. Gossip articles didn't relent. Photos circulated of Felicity's growing belly, leading to endless speculation. Felicity herself was in turmoil, trapped between wanting Alexander's support and despising him for refusing a relationship. Meanwhile, Harriet Brandt prodded her about legal measures to secure financial stability. At the same time, Alexander's biggest rival in the tech industry, a cunning entrepreneur named Grant Whitmore, seized upon the scandal to destabilize Alexander's position. Rumors swirled in boardrooms that Alexander was too preoccupied with personal affairs to effectively lead. Some shareholders suggested a vote of no confidence. Rosalind tried to remain calm for her baby's sake, but she was drowning in heartbreak and worry. Every night, she thought about her child, uncertain whether the family she had dreamed of would ever materialize. She began seeing Dr. Caldwell more frequently as her blood pressure rose with the stress. Dr. Caldwell cautioned her, "You need to rest and avoid emotional turmoil, Rosalind. We don't want any complications at this stage." But rest was elusive in a mansion that felt haunted by betrayal. One day, Alexander received a call from an unexpected source, Harriet Brandt, Felicity's lawyer. He had assumed Harriet wanted to discuss a settlement, but instead, she proposed a meeting at her office, just him without Felicity. Curious and wary, Alexander arrived at Harriet's upscale office suite in downtown San Francisco, where he was greeted by a cheerful receptionist who led him to a glass-walled conference room. Harriet Brandt, a sharp-dressed woman in her late 40s, stepped inside, closed the door, and offered him a seat. "Mr. Davenport," she began, "I represent Ms. Monroe's interests, but I also have a broad view of this situation. I want to see if we can reach a mutually beneficial resolution. Alexander pursed his lips. I'm willing to support her, but I can't give her a relationship. Harriet gave a subtle nod. Felicity understands that. However, she's worried about her financial stability, her career, and the child's future. He swallowed. I'll make sure the child wants for nothing education, health care, a trust fund, whatever is needed. She held his gaze. That's admirable. But I also sense that you're in danger of losing your marriage. If that happens, you may lose more than you realize. His eyes flickered with anxiety. I'm aware. Rosalind is my wife, the mother of my firstborn, and I love her. Harriet lowered her voice, leaning in. Then, I suggest you be honest with her, fully honest. Offer Felicity a substantial arrangement in writing, so there's no ambiguity. Show your wife that you're serious about mitigating the damage you've caused. Alexander considered. What if Rosalind can't accept that another child is in the picture? Harriet's expression softened slightly. She might surprise you, or she may choose divorce. But whatever you do, don't keep Felicity and this baby a secret. That will come back to haunt you. And if Ms. Monroe feels cornered, she might go public with everything. He mulled over the advice. It was risky, but Harriet was right. Secrets only fester. He needed to face the consequences head-on. Rosalind, meanwhile, had begun exploring her own legal avenues. Her friend Juliet Chambers, a well-connected family lawyer, had quietly drawn up preliminary divorce papers. Rosalind felt sick at the thought of signing them, but she knew she had to be prepared. One evening, while her parents were out, Alexander arrived at the house. He texted her from the driveway, "Please talk to me. I need to show you something important." Rosalind, after a moment's hesitation, invited him in. They sat in the living room, pastel curtains swaying in the evening breeze. He handed her a set of legal documents. "This is an official agreement I drafted with Felicity," he began. "I'm making a financial commitment to support her pregnancy, cover any medical expenses, and establish a trust for the child's future. I won't hide it anymore." Rosalind flipped through the papers, noting the sums involved enough to ensure Felicity and her child would live in comfort. Tears threatened to brim in Rosalind's eyes again. "So you want me to accept this arrangement while you care for a child with your mistress?" He swallowed hard. "That child is my son or daughter too. I can't just walk away, but I promise I choose you. I want our marriage to work, our child to grow up with both parents. I'll do whatever it takes, therapy, signing a post-nup that benefits you, anything." The silence stretched. Outside, a car horn blared faintly. "Alexander," she said softly, "what if I can't live with this? What if the pain is too much?" His voice trembled. "Then I'll respect your decision. But I'm begging you to give me a chance. I've made a terrible mistake, but I still love you more than anything." She squeezed her eyes shut. "The tabloids are calling me a fool. My friends whisper behind my back. My family wants me to leave you. But I'm so tired of heartbreak. I'm so tired of everything." He reached for her hands. "Rosalind, you don't have to decide tonight. I just want you to know I'm committed. Whatever it takes, I'll do it." She looked into his eyes and saw genuine remorse, maybe even desperation. Quietly, she nodded. "We'll see." 2 weeks later, Rosalind's due date was dangerously close. The baby was expected any day, and Dr. Caldwell had advised that she minimize stress. Alexander tried to be there for her, accompanying her on hospital visits, helping decorate the nursery, and politely avoiding the subject of Felicity unless Rosalind asked. Yet the strain remained. At times, Rosalind would break down, recalling the betrayal or envisioning the child Felicity would soon bear. She wrestled with whether she could ever truly forgive Alexander or if she would always see him as the man who broke her trust when she was most vulnerable. Then, on a rainy afternoon, while Rosalind was alone at home, her water broke. The house staff scrambled to assist her, calling Alexander and her parents. An ambulance was summoned, rushing her to the hospital through slick streets. Alexander dashed out of a meeting the moment he got the call. Heart pounding, he navigated the flooded roads to reach the hospital, hoping he wouldn't be too late. When he arrived, Beatrice and Nigel were already in the waiting room, looking worried. Dr. Caldwell emerged moments later, beckoning him. "She's asking for you. She's in labor, contractions are coming quickly. You might want to suit up." Alexander threw on a sterile gown and hurried into the delivery room. Rosalind lay there, sweat beading on her forehead, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Seeing him, she reached out with trembling fingers. He clasped her hand. "I'm here," he whispered. "You can do this." The next few hours were a blur of pain, encouragement, and frantic medical activity. Rosalind's labor was more complicated than expected. The baby's heart rate dropped occasionally, and there were whispers among the nurses of an emergency C-section. But finally, after an intense struggle, the baby's cries filled the air. A healthy baby girl, with a shock of dark hair wailing in protest at her abrupt arrival. Rosalind burst into tears, both of relief and joy. Alexander felt something inside him shift in that moment, an overwhelming rush of love for his daughter and for the woman who had brought her into the world. He pressed a gentle kiss to Rosalind's forehead. "She's perfect," he murmured. Dr. Caldwell and the nurses quickly checked the baby's vitals, then placed the tiny bundle in Rosalind's arms. The new mother wept softly, gazing down at her daughter. For a moment, the betrayal and heartbreak seemed to fade, replaced by the miracle of new life. Just when the Davenports thought they could savor this moment of familial bliss, fate intervened again. 2 days after Rosalind gave birth, Alexander received a frantic call from Felicity. She sounded breathless, distraught. "I'm in the hospital," she gasped. I fell at home. They said my baby is in distress." Alexander's heart lurched. Which hospital? She named a facility across town. He hesitated, glancing at Rosalind, who was dozing in her hospital bed with their newborn daughter snuggled beside her. Could he leave Rosalind's side just after she'd given birth? But Felicity was carrying his child, and from her panicked tone, this was an emergency. Driven by a sense of duty, Alexander quietly slipped out, leaving a note for Rosalind with the nurse. "Had to handle an urgent matter, be back soon." He arrived at the hospital, where Felicity lay in a high-risk obstetrics ward, her face etched with fear and pain. The doctor explained that the fall had caused placental complications and they needed to do an emergency C-section. Alexander stood by Felicity's side as the medical team rushed her into surgery. She clung to his hand, tears staining her cheeks. "Don't leave me," she whispered. Under the harsh, fluorescent lights of the operating room, Alexander witnessed his second child come into the world, a premature but alive baby boy. The doctors quickly whisked the infant away to the NICU, leaving Felicity pale and trembling on the surgical table. She reached for him, her words faint. "Is he okay? They're taking care of him," Alexander reassured her, though he was trembling himself. After the surgery, he stayed by Felicity's side until she stabilized, then went to see his son, a tiny creature fighting for life in an incubator, tubes and monitors beeping. Alexander gazed at the child, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions: love, fear, guilt, heartbreak. He ran a hand through his hair, feeling the weight of two families resting on his shoulders. "What am I doing here?" Word reached Rosalind the next morning. She awoke to find the note from Alexander, but he hadn't returned. Worried, she called him repeatedly, and eventually he picked up in the hallway of the hospital's NICU. "Rosalind," he said, voice hoarse. "I'm sorry, Felicity had an accident. She went into premature labor." Rosalind's heart sank. "Is the baby okay?" He swallowed. "Yes. He's in NICU, but the doctors are hopeful." She was silent, trying to process. "You left me 2 days after I gave birth to be with the woman who—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Please understand, I had to make sure they were safe," he pleaded. She took a shaky breath. "I do understand. You're that baby's father. But where does that leave us?" "Alexander?" He closed his eyes, leaning against the hospital wall. "I don't know." Later that day, Rosalind, with her parents' help, left her hospital room against medical advice. Ignoring the nurses' protests, she insisted on visiting the NICU where Felicity and her baby were. She needed closure. Dressed in a wheelchair, still weak from labor, she arrived at the NICU. The sight of tiny babies in incubators was both humbling and heartbreaking. Felicity was in a recovery bed nearby, exhausted. Rosalind's presence sent a ripple of tension through the air. Felicity looked away, tears forming. Alexander moved toward Rosalind, hesitant. She stared at the incubator where Felicity's baby lay. A nurse was adjusting tubes. "He's so small," Rosalind murmured, a mixture of empathy and anguish in her voice. Alexander crouched beside her wheelchair. "Rosalind, you shouldn't have come here. You need to rest." She shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I had to see." Then she gazed at Felicity, who was weeping softly. "I never wanted to hate you," Rosalind whispered. I'm hurting too." Felicity's lips quivered. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you either. I loved him." A heavy silence hung in the air, punctuated only by the soft beeps of the medical machines. Rosalind exhaled slowly. "My daughter was born 2 days ago. She deserves a father who isn't torn apart by guilt and duty. She paused, swallowing a sob. "If you want to be part of your son's life, I understand. But our marriage—" Alexander reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Rosalind, please." She looked into his eyes, heartbreak etched on her face. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if we can fix this. But for now, be here for your son. He needs you. My parents will take me home." He stood there, torn, watching, as she turned her wheelchair around and left. Felicity's soft whimper for help echoed in the background, and the nurse's reassuring words mingled with the steady beep of machines. In the weeks following the storm, the Davenport estate settled into a kind of quiet that felt unfamiliar, an in-between place, neither peaceful nor chaotic. Rosalind had returned home with Charlotte, but the wounds of betrayal still lingered beneath the surface. Alexander lived in a separate wing of the mansion, a deliberate distance they both agreed upon. Not as punishment, but as space. Space to reflect, to grieve, to breathe. Rosalind's days were filled with her daughter's needs, nursing lullabies, soft cries in the night. Charlotte became her anchor, her constant, her reason to get up each morning. She poured all her energy into motherhood, even as her heart wrestled with the weight of what had been lost. Alexander, too, was changing. He kept a low profile, declining public events and stepping back from his company's board meetings. He spent hours each day with Charlotte, feeding her, rocking her, learning the rhythm of her newborn needs. His business suits gave way to soft shirts and rolled-up sleeves. His eyes, once sharp with ambition, now held a quiet humility. They began attending therapy together at the suggestion of their lawyers, an attempt to manage their fractured dynamic for Charlotte's sake. But over time, the sessions uncovered something unexpected, a willingness, however reluctant, to confront their pain. Rosalind spoke of the humiliation, the betrayal, the nights she cried silently while carrying their child. Alexander listened no longer with excuses, but with remorse. He admitted how his need for validation and excitement had led him down a selfish path. He spoke of Felicity not with affection, but as a reflection of who he used to be, a man driven by ego, not wisdom. Their therapist, Dr. Eliza Barnett, guided them gently through the thorns of resentment and regret. Some sessions ended in tears, others in silence, but a few ended with the faintest flicker of hope. Meanwhile, Alexander continued supporting Felicity and baby Noah. He visited the boy weekly, paid for his medical care, and ensured they had what they needed. But he never crossed the line into intimacy again. That chapter for him was closed. One afternoon, as he returned from seeing Noah, he paused at the nursery doorway. Rosalind was rocking Charlotte, her soft humming barely audible. She looked up and met his eyes. There was no smile, but also no anger. He stepped inside, slow and cautious. "Can I hold her?" he asked. Rosalind nodded. He reached out and took Charlotte in his arms, her tiny form settling against his chest. In that moment, the silence between them wasn't painful. It was full of something new. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. The days grew longer, as spring turned to summer, bringing with it a strange calm over the Davenport household. The mansion that had once echoed with tension now settled into a quieter rhythm. Charlotte's soft cries and gurgles filled the nursery. Her tiny presence was the only thing that made the silence bearable. Felicity's son Noah had grown stronger with each passing week. After nearly 2 months in the NICU, he was finally discharged. Felicity had brought him home to a modest but comfortable apartment Alexander had arranged for her in a gated community just outside San Francisco. She never asked for more than what was necessary, and Alexander quietly appreciated her restraint. She had stopped calling. There were no more impassioned late-night pleas, no more illusions of a rekindled romance. She had made her choice to be a mother, and only that. Alexander, meanwhile, was slowly trying to rebuild his life, not as a CEO or a millionaire, but as a father and a man who had almost lost everything. Every evening, he spent time with Charlotte, reading her stories she was too young to understand, singing lullabies off-key, and cradling her until she fell asleep in his arms. He knew Rosalind saw the effort, even if she didn't say much. The house was no longer hostile, but it wasn't warm either. They existed in parallel co-parents under one roof, courteous, cautious, both scarred. One crisp afternoon, Rosalind sat alone on the terrace, sipping a mug of herbal tea. The garden below was in full bloom. Jasmine, honeysuckle, and soft white roses perfumed the breeze. Charlotte slept in a nearby stroller, wrapped in a blanket, her chest rising and falling in gentle rhythm. Alexander stepped outside, hesitating at first. He hadn't been invited to join her, but the open door and the quiet stillness drew him in. He walked over to the railing and stood beside her, gazing out across the garden. Thinking about Noah, Rosalind asked, her voice gentle, not accusatory. Alexander turned, surprised by her softness. "Yes, I visit him twice a week. He's doing better, starting to smile now." She nodded, her eyes still fixed on the horizon. "It's not how any of us imagined this is it." "No," he admitted. "None of this is what I planned." There was a pause. The only sound was the rustling of leaves in the breeze and the distant chirp of birds. Rosalind finally looked at him. Her face was composed, but her eyes shimmered. I see you trying, Alexander. I see how you are with Charlotte. I see that you're there for Noah, and I know you've been in therapy doing the work. That matters. He turned toward her, unsure of what to say. Her words felt like a small sliver of light in a room long dark. I can't forget what happened, she continued. I don't even know if I can forgive you completely. But for the sake of our daughter, for the sake of all of us, maybe we can try to move forward. Not as the people we were, but as who we are now. Hope flickered across Alexander's face. I'd give anything for a second chance, Rosalind. Not just to be in this house, but to be worthy of your trust again. She looked down at her sleeping daughter. It'll take time. And boundaries. And honesty. You'll have it, he said, without hesitation. All of it. Rosalind studied him for a long moment. Then, without a word, she extended her hand toward him. Alexander took it gently, holding it as though it were made of glass. It wasn't a grand reconciliation. It wasn't a kiss or a declaration of everlasting love, but it was something real, a choice to try again. And on that jasmine-scented terrace, with their daughter sleeping peacefully beside them, Alexander and Rosalind began the slow, fragile journey towards something new. Not perfect, not painless, but possible. Thank you for joining this roller coaster of secrets, heartbreak, and redemption. We followed Alexander, a millionaire, whose forbidden desires led to a shocking betrayal, leaving his pregnant wife, Rosalind, devastated, and a frightened mistress, Felicity, clinging to hope. In the end, two innocent children were born into a world fractured by lies but anchored by unwavering love. This story reminds us that even the wealthiest lives can be undone by misplaced passion, and that trust once broken must be rebuilt piece by painstaking piece. If you found yourself drawn into the suspense of this story, if you held your breath during those tearful confrontations and heart-stopping reveals, please consider supporting us. Like this video to show your appreciation, share it with friends who love drama and twists, and subscribe to our channel for more intense, gripping stories. Your support helps us continue bringing you narratives that stir the heart and imagination.